Space, the final frontier. These iconic words from the 1960s sci-fi epic Star Trek inspired the minds of millions, young and old, to fantasize about the endless possibilities of space travel. In 1969, those fantasies became a reality with the first moon landing of the Apollo 11. Mankind had done it, landed the first man on the moon, and taken their first steps. Since then, and including then, there's been significant pushback on whether or not that budget was worth being allocated to that use. My aim is to show just how beneficial space travel can be in the world around us today. The cost of the satellite, first moon landing was mostly used to spite the USSR and to establish satellite dominance across the globe, which is incredibly useful in the day we live in today. If we look around us, there are endless uses for satellites. The first being navigating using GPS, something that I've done permanently in my life, as I'm terrible with directions. Back in my traveling salesman days, I used it so much that it burned into my screen and I was constantly 3 minutes away from my destination. Satellites have been used for many, many years at this point for observation of the Earth and space, communication, navigation, experimentation, and many other uses. And I would say most people don't argue that that's not a useful thing. However, the traveling past low Earth orbit and past having just satellites observing on Earth, I would say is a pretty controversial point. There are many companies who are pursuing this area, first of which is SpaceX, who wants to create rockets that can be reused to cut costs and establish a man-made city on Mars. Then there's Blue Origin. Similar to SpaceX, they want to create reusable rockets that other people can use to travel to different planets, different asteroids, and to use any sort of space exploration that we can find. Then there's NASA. Everyone's familiar with NASA, furthering the knowledge of space and exploration and research on the practical effects of space on different Earth substances and different organic matter. Then there's Virgin Galactic, bringing space travel into the norm through space tourism. Their goal is to make space travel a normal event, being able to go up either as just a tour or just to experience space firsthand for regular people rather than someone who has spent their entire life training to be an astronaut. Each company has a different aim with their companies, but altogether, they could have a successful formula for space travel. Regular people could be taken, like trade scientists, engineers, farmers, on a SpaceX or Blue Origin rocket to a SpaceX settlement on Mars, allowing the space and technology to experiment for NASA. It sounds wild, but not any more wild than the thought of landing on the moon in 1969. With the method of exploring different planets, asteroids, and moons around us figured out, theoretically, what would the benefits to mankind be of the individual? On the NASA website, they have a quote that says, "Through addressing the challenges related to human space exploration, we expand technology, create new industries, and help to foster a peaceful connection with other nations." They believe that humanity's desire to explore the world around us and the space around our world, we can give up our individuality and come together united in a common cause of exploration, which also creates new markets, new technology to work with. A great example of that, we have a handful of things in today's world that we use on a regular basis that came about because of NASA's experiments with space travel. The first one being wireless headphones or earbuds. I'd say all of us have at some point used wireless headphones of some sort. Those were originally invented by NASA in order to give the astronauts on the space station and in spacecraft the ability to use audio equipment without all the cords getting tangled around, especially in zero gravity. Memory foam was also invented by NASA to cushion the seats of the moon landers so that if they had a particularly rough landing, it wouldn't damage them or hurt them. I'd say we use those all the time in pillows, mattresses, camping pads, everything else. Freeze-dried snacks, also invented by NASA. The process was designed in order to take up nutritious foods without having the ability of them to spoil or go bad over time. And the last one would be the phone camera, something that almost everybody has used on a regular basis. Originally invented again by NASA. Their goal was to create small, compact devices that would have the same pixels and the same quality as a much, much larger camera. And that tech is in about 1/3 of all the smartphones we use today. These are all byproducts of the endeavor to explore space, but what about the actual exploration itself? Simply put, we don't know what we'll find until we go out and find it. There may be out there in space a miracle element that could contain power like electricity or gather the power of the sun in a solar system 1,000 times more powerful than what we have today. If we were to find such technology, it would change the world we live in on a regular basis. Imagine a smartphone that never dies. Imagine an electric car that never runs out of battery. Imagine a home that's able to be powered by a battery system that doesn't rely on a collective grid that's susceptible to damage and failure. Another thing that could happen is if we find a material that's as light as a feather, but as strong as steel. If something like that were to be found, it would pioneer a whole new system of architecture across the world. It could be used in everything in everyday structures, in vehicles, in computers, in just about everything we have, and would change the world around us. But we won't be able to know if that's out there unless we go out and look for it. The next issue that we could address with space travel is overpopulation. The population of the Earth grows at about 3.1% annually, and only 5% of the globe is livable space. At those numbers, unfortunately, we are outliving the world we live in around us. According to a report backed by Stanford University, we can see evidence of overpopulation in two major events. First, people are rapidly replacing wildlife species across the globe, initiating a mass extinction event. Second, we are degrading ecosystems that provide essential, irreplaceable environmental services that future generations will need to live decent lives. This quote from this Stanford-backed university shows exactly what we're doing to the world around us. One way we could address that is by offloading large numbers of the population to either a livable planet that we find or to a civilization we build on another planet. Even if that didn't solve the population problem, it would create a human backup in case of total disaster for planet Earth. On a regular basis, we back up everything. We back things up to the cloud, we back things up to a hard drive, because whatever we want to save is important. And if, heaven forbid, there were to be a cataclysmic event that would either remove Earth life or damage life to an irreparable state, at least we would have a planet that would be inhabited by humans that could either come back and save what's left of humanity or rebuild from there. As it stands, if humanity gets in trouble on Earth, there isn't much we can do about it, except await our demise, as countless planetary disaster movies has shown. Far-fetched? Yes. But Elon Musk, founder of SpaceX, doesn't think so, stating that Earth is about 4.5 billion years old, but life is still not multiplanetary. It is extremely uncertain how much time is left to become so. This is the basis of his attempts to build a rocket capable of traveling to Mars to take people and products there and create a civilization. The last area I would like to explore is that of energy production. Currently, the burning of fossil fuels to create energy is responsible for 80% of the electricity used on the planet and 60% of the CO2 emissions in a single year. It's unsustainable, expensive, and slowly killing our planet. Nuclear energy is a far more economical, clean, and renewable energy source, though one of its biggest downsides is its byproduct of radioactive waste. If the world were to be powered by nuclear energy, we would end up with millions of tons of radioactive waste that we simply could not get rid of in any feasible way on planet Earth. However, if we had a system to offload that onto an already radioactive and desolate planet, then we could remove that fear of planet Earth and integrate a far more economical system of power for the Earth. Centuries down the road, when humans have become an interplanetary species, I think we will look back and wonder why we thought that space travel wasn't worth the effort. Every modern invention, from cars to planes, the internet, to everything around us, was at one point unfeasible and ridiculous and expensive and difficult to create. And yet, now that we have them, looking back, it's hard to imagine life without them. So now, when you're asked if there is any point to exploring space, I hope some of these thoughts come to mind, and whether the reason is technological byproduct, the increased safety of the planet, or the allure of exploring the unknown, I hope you realize just how beneficial it will be and that you put your full support behind these endeavors.